speaking about the last couple of weeks, speaking about the Issa of Shia. The Issa of Shia is that you had a tafshel they put on the fire before Shabbos. And the chashash was that you might be mechater. And we spoke about the Machaikis, Rabbanon, and Chananya. Chananya holds once it's a special, Kamaichem and the Soy, there's no chashash chiti anymore. And according to the sheet of the Rabbanon, once it's a special, fully cooked, and the Masam Barali, there's no chashash. Upon him, that was the Benegir Issa Shia. We'll start talking about now the Issa CHAZARA. The Issa CHAZARA means that something was on the fire and you took it off. Now you want to put it back on the fire. And the shaila is, which oifin is a mutter? We're going to see different troim. But today I want to really discuss the shayrish of the Issa CHAZARA. What is the Issa CHAZARA? But before we discuss the Issa CHAZARA, something very important to point out, that whenever we discuss the Issa CHAZARA, we're talking about when there's no shaila bishul. Obviously, if you put something on the fire before Shabbos, even if it wasn't cooked at all, you're not doing any bishul. Everything is happening by itself. We don't pass it like Beishamai, there's a problem of Shvisas Kelum. So the fact that it's cooking over Shabbos, that's not a problem. But if you take a pot off the fire on Shabbos and you want to put it back, obviously, if it's not fully cooked, forget about the problem of CHAZARA, you have a problem of bishul. So when we discuss CHAZARA, we're talking about at the point when there's no bishul, that's where CHAZARA starts. So, for example, Mitzvah, you learn in the Bishul, Shinyat Ches, Siv Dalad, there's a Machoik to show him if once something's this Bashal, Kamaichem, Medrusoy, there's no problem with Bishul, or only if it's fully cooked. The Machaba over there paskins that only when it's fully cooked, there's a heter. But till it's fully cooked, there's still going to be a problem with Bishul. So, whenever we discuss CHAZARA, you have to be careful that the pot should be fully cooked before, because once you take it off, it's not fully cooked. You can't put it back on. Mishabur will see there says even if it's a suffix, it's a suffix deraisa, you wouldn't be able to put it back. Which has another reason why a person should never leave anything on the fire before Shabbos. It's not fully cooked because it's always a chash that you might take it off and then you're going to put it back. It'll be over on exhibition. So what comes out is that the only way a person could make CHAZARA is when there's no question of bishul, which means that the tafshel was fully cooked. So I want to speak about what is exactly the Yisod of Issa CHAZARA. Kipshuta l'chari, you could say, it's the same Issa like we have Shia. Just like Shia, there's a chash chitu. CHAZARA also is a chash chitu. But l'chari is very schwer to hear that. Why? Because even like the mandama lachsor tanan, that means we're going lechananya, even though there's no Issa Shia, still there's a problem with CHAZARA. Means he also wants to come and say there's no problem of Shia. There's no problem he's giving mechata. So why by CHAZARA, all of a sudden we're so worried about that he's giving mechata? According to Rabban, something is bashal kotzorkoi and mistamet v'raloi. Also Allah we hold there's no problem. But Ava Pikin legabe CHAZARA, the Ran says lahedya, the Mishmur Paschal that way, that legabe CHAZARA, even if it's fully cooked, even if it's mistamet v'raloi, there still is a Issa CHAZARA. The question is, what's the Issa CHAZARA? If the chash is a chash chitui, what is the pasach chash chitui if something is fully cooked and it's a samvaral? This is the question. So there's two mahalchim in the Shainim to answer this question. I'm going to try to go through it. Bekitzer. The first mahalach is to say, maybe the Isser of CHAZARA is a new Isser. The Isser is the Isser of Mechzik Mevashal. The Bitfor Chadoshim says very clear at the beginning of the Sugya that if you go to the Mishnah, it's going like Hananya, and the Isser is CHAZARA, the Mishnah is not discussing Chash Chitui, because there's no Chash Chitui once it's Bashal Kamaichem and Soy. But the Chash is that's Mechzik Mevashal. Since you're putting a pot on the fire on Shabbos, it looks like you're cooking it. No one knows if it was cooked or wasn't cooked. So it looks like Mechzik Mevashal. As I said before, in the Rashba, remember Rashi in the Mishnah is Pashtas Mashal that way. Because Rashi in the Mishnah says, when he explains what's Shanam Beishamai, Beishamai doesn't hold there's a het CHAZARA. But so Rashi says, because he holds Mechzik Mevashal. In the Svara of Basil that argues, Rashi says, Hoyev Gorf. Says Mashma that Basil is not arguing on the Chash of Mechzik Mevashal. Basil says, since you made a group of Ketuma, that's why there's no Mechzik Mevashal. That means everyone's masking that there is a problem of CHAZARA because Mechzik Mevashal, not as Chash Chitu. But Basil holds that if you make a Gorf of Cotton, that's going to take care of that problem because now it's different the way you normally cook. And Beishami holds that it's still going to be a problem. So it comes out, if you go with this Malach in the Shainim, that there's a new Issa of CHAZARA that's nothing to do with the Chash Chitu that we find by Shia. It's Issa because of Mechzik Mevashal. And that's why even Gabi Shia, Chananya holds once it's Kamaichem and the Soy. There's no Chash Chitu because a person knows that is can be nechal day at chak. According to Rabbanon, if it's a special cold sorkoi, it's mistamak v'raloi, right? There's no chash chitui. Why not? Because a person knows that there's no point to be mechata. Forget it's only going to make it worse. But the gabe chazara, it's going to be also b'chol even if it's fully cooked, even if it's mistamak v'raloi, doesn't make a difference. The etzem fact that you're putting a dera on the fire, if it's not gorva kotum, looks like you mean vashal. I made the chazal guys. So it comes out really in Lomdus, even though Saila Gabe Chazora and Saila Gabe Shio, it helps Gorfa Cotton. The Mishnah says, told you Gorfa Cotton. If the Mishnah is going like Rabbanon is talking about the Gabe Issa Shio, the Mishnah is talking about Chananya, is talking about the Gabe Issa Chazora. La Locha, we hold that both are true. That Gorfa Cotton is going to help for both. But it comes out, it's Cholik Bi Yisoidoi, why Gorfa Cotton is going to help. And it's totally on what the Issa is. That the Isser is mitzadach shash chitui, that's the problem. So gorva kotem tu zoif, like we spoke about once, either you made a hecker, they shouldn't come to chitui, or you misalik the hoch shash chitui, the Moshe take out the gecholim. Mashengel gabe chazara, there the lumdus of what the gorva kotem is tu zoif is that now it's not the normal way you cook, and mainly you misalik the hoch shash of mechzik and vash. That's why Taka Beishamay the Moshe holds that the Gabi Shiel, Moshe Chamin, the Mishnah says that it helps Gorva Kotten. The Gabi Chazor doesn't because it's two different noises. There's a noisa of Shiel, and Gorva Kotten is the Salak Chash, or it's a hecker. Masheni Chazora, the Gorva Kotten has to make it that we don't see it. Mechsig and Vashel. So Beishami holds Mechatesa, that's Ketura. That's the Mahalach of the Rash, Ritva, so it's Mash from Rashi, that the Issa Chazor is a new Issa because of Mechsig and Vashel. Midach Isa is a Taisis and the Flamches. We're not going to go into Taisis, but Taisis and Flamches is Mavur, Kamoisha Krad Diktuku, as Fasemes and the Maram, Vidvorov, and Taisis is Mavur that the Isser of Chazara is because of Chash Chitu, just like by Shia. As I is Mavur in the Ran over there, the Ran over there comes to answer Taisis Kasha, Taisis tells you at the moment, the Ran says it's not a Zustel, because over there, the Chash is a Chash Chitu. Mashengen over here, by Chazora is a shail of Mexican Vashal, but Taisa sheet is that it's a chash of chash chitui. Just like by Shia, Memis look at the Balamor, is also move that way. So the sheet of Taisis and the Balamor is that the Issa Chazora is similar to the Issa of Shia, it's a chash chitui. Now, the obvious, so comes out like them that if I can, maybe you can say that's Guru Chakes Bisham Basil. Means Beishamay holds the Gabi Shia would help Gorfa Kottens. Why does he hold the Gabi Chazor doesn't help? The Teretz is he holds the Nuch Shashim, Mechsig and Vashal. But Beis Hillel is going to argue, not like Rashi says because Hoiva Gorf. No, if it would be Gorfa, wouldn't help. Beis Hillel is going to argue because he holds the Chash by Chazor is also an Eltzchit. It's not Mechsig and Vashal. And maybe the Gorfa Kottens is going to help. Like upon him, that's what comes out from these showing him that the Isser of Chazor is also Chash Chitah. Now the obvious question is, and we get back to our first question, if by Chazara, the reason why it's a problem is because of Chash Chitui, so why is Chazara more Chomer than Shia? Why the Gabi Chazara is the Alocha that even like Chananya, it's going to be Osir, even though it's Mispasha Kamachim and Nesoi. Or like Rabbanon, if it's Mispasha Kol it's Mistava Viraloi, why should it be a Chash Chitui? That's the question. So this question is addressed by the Rebbeinu Tam in the Sefer Yosher. The Shabur will see soon in the Shatzi and the Mitzayin, but the Rebbeinu Tam in the Sefer Yosher, the Sameach brings it out, and the Shit Laran also in the Sugya says the same idea, and the Kolboy, the Beis Yezer brings down, that their idea is that when Chazor were talking about, you took a pot off the fire. So even if you have the Tunei Chazor, that means you held it in your hand, it was Daitalachs, but the Mitzvah says it was off the fire. Sometimes it could be off the fire for a couple of minutes. And Lamaisa, it could have cooled down. So maybe when a person's putting it back on the fire and the person sees that the tafshel got a little bit cooled down, there's always going to be a chash that he'll be mechatet. So it's different than Shia. Why is it different than Shia? Because by Shia, a person put the pot on the fire, he's not being oisuk with the pot. It comes to suit, they'll take off the pot. So then the Charanya holds once Kamachim and Nesoi. We're not worried that he's going to be mechatet because he knows he can eat a day at chak. The Rabbanon, it's fully cooked and it's mistam for you don't have to worry about it. But when you have chazor, when you took the kedei off the fire, you're holding in your hand now, and you see that it got cold, there everyone holds as a much more chash chitui, and melo, there's no heter unless you make it gorfa kotten. Now, according to them, the gorfa kotten, like we said before, is similar to the Gorfa Kotam of Shia. Either it's a hacker, they shouldn't come to the Mechata, or it's the Masalik Doch Shash, because there's no Gecholim anymore. So the Kitzur, what comes out is we have Machoikis showing him what is the Isser of CHAZARA. In other words, why is CHAZARA more common than Shia? The Lagabi Shia, the halach is that if it's Kamaichem and Soil, Chananya, or like Rabbanon, if it's fully cooked, there's no Chash Chitui, and why Lagabi CHAZARA is a more common. So either the Pshat is because here it's Mechsekim and Vashal, Melo, it's a whole new Chash. Melo, that Chash you have and then you're going to have to say the din of Gorfa Kotan makes it that it's not Mechsekim and Vashal. Mashay Lagabi Shia, the Gorfa Kotan makes it that you Masalak to Chash, what's a hacker. Mashenkin Toisvis, with the email, the Balamor holds that no, CHAZARA is similar to Shia to Chash Chitui. What's the difference between the two? Why is CHAZARA more common? The answer is because since a person is holding the pot in his hand and he's Isaac with it, there's much more of a Chash Chitui that will be Mechatet today to make sure the pot gets warmed up. Which comes like that Shita, the Isser of CHAZARA and Shia of B'Shosh form is the same Isser of Chash Chitui, but there's a much more of a Chash Chitui like CHAZARA, and therefore the Begoyes of Chagavna. But what Gorfa Kotam to Zoif comes out as similar to what's going to for Gabi Shia. Now, the obvious question is, who do we pass like? Do we pass like the Shita of Toises, that's the Chash Chitui, or we pass like the Shita of the Rashba, the Ritva, that it's because Mechsekim and Vashal. I'll see soon. So you look at the Magen Avraham, many places, in Sifkat and Chavov, Sifkat Mem Gimel, is very clear that he holds that the Isser is Al Chash Chitui, like the sheet of Taisis and the Balamor. The Mishnah Berurah and Sifkat Lamed Zayin says very clear, when he talks about this CHAZARA, he said, Oik Shabolach Siyah B'Shabbos, the Mechsekim and Vashal Meina Gruf. And Mishnah Berurah Kaseidah used the Sprach of Mechsekim and Vashal. The Shatzi, and he still sued, look in Rebbeinu Tam and Sevi Yosha, it says another reason. But it seems to be clear in Mishnah Berurah that he well held of the reason of Mechsekim and Vashal. There's other places that he does bring down the Chash Chitui because he's quoting the Lashon of Magen Avraham, but the Shoyish Advarim is a word in Mishnah Berurah that he went to the Isser of CHAZARA is a new Isser of Mechsekim and Vashal. Midach Yisa, the Chazanish says that no, the Isser CHAZARA is a Chash Chitui. And because that he said that it's just like we spoke about like Abi Shia. Someone is Masha Kedera, let's say a couple hours before Shabbos. So if you take it off before Shabbos, I did it bad in the Chram, but that is good for the Issa Shia. The Issa Shia is that you have to make sure that comes Shabbos, you shouldn't be Masha. Shouldn't leave it there. Even if a koif put it on the fire before Shabbos. Ava Pekin, you have an Isser to be Masha the Gdera. Like we spoke about, that's why the Gemara says in Aflam Ches, it's something that's called Lo Yavad Maisa. That means it's Isser Lo Yavad Maisa. So Chazanish says the same thing in the Gabi CHAZARA. What's going to be the halacha if a monkey made CHAZARA? A monkey made CHAZARA on something that's not Gorfa Kotan. A monkey took it off and he made a CHAZARA. Is there going to be a problem? So like the Mishnah Berurah, about it, there's no problem. I didn't do any CHAZARAs. There's no Mechsekim and Vashal. Like the Chazanish, there could still be a problem. Because once there's CHAZARA, there's a Mechsekim and Vashal, there's a Chash Chitui, and the Chazanish read Zok Lahedya. The Eina is in the Sinala Metzias Matzav Zeus Achayim, Shem Yechat, Bachov Klachzera, Yam Ba'atzmo, Ede Noch, Efil Him Noch, Koif, Chayev Lahosim. That Losh Chaznish, I'm sorry, I quote is talking about Gabi Shia, but if he's always and who are the Gabi CHAZARA, it's the same thing. Oh. So what's the nafkimina? Okay. The shadow what the Londis is Chash Chitui or because of Mechsekim and Vashal. But the emes is this kam of a common nafkimina is that you can cheshbin la locha. One nafkimina is like this. What's la locha legabi Shia? Do you have to take out all the gecholim from the kira? Or it's enough to take out the gecholim from under the pot. So, remember we spoke about once, I think in the first year, it's Machoikis, Balamor, and the Rashba. If you have to misalik all the gecholim, or it's enough to misalik the gecholim under the kter. We spoke about what the Machoikis was, but Allah we paskin, they have to misalik all the gecholim. Why? Because the chash chitui, you have to misalik the whole chash. Mishnah Berurah brings down a sifkon samaches, Yeshulus Yankiv, that says, so this is Lashon Mishnah Berurah. If Masha Kosa b'Sei Yeshulus Yankiv in CHAZARA, Sagi k'shegor v'chol sarecha yesh lahakol im gor v'chol b'yoyim shirak sarecha. That means the Shabbos Yankiv says a murder Chiddush that even though like Shia, if you go to the Cholim just in Tzad that means it's not under the Gdera, the Shia doesn't help because of Chash Chitu. Pasha Enkel, the Chazaras or Shabbos Yankiv, as long as you took it, put it on the side, obviously did it before Shabbos, now you want to be Machzer on that place, and there's no Cholim over there, there's no problem. The HaRav and Mishavur Red Tuch over there, the Shatiyim, that's only the Gabe. The Chazara, like Abba Shia, it's in Forsh Shulchan, they have to be Garif Kol. So Nira, this Mishabura is Lishitasa. And since the Mishabura holds that the Issa Chazara is Mechsing of Ashol, Mez Mishabura says that we find in the Rishayim, that we pass that they have to be Garif to all the Gecholim. That's what we're talking about when this is Shashchitu. So then we hold that even if there's no Gecholim directly under the Gdera, but as long as there is Gecholim in the Tanner, there's a Chash, someone's going to come to Mechata. But the Gabi Chazara, 1 second, we're talking about it's not Shashchitu here. Something was his Basha Kamaycha and Soilech on you. Or where the Rabban it's fully cooked. So it's not Shashchitu. No, boss, it's Mechsing and Vashel. So it's Mechsing and Vashel as long as the Maisa, you're not putting it directly on top of the coals, that takes away the Chash of Mechsing and Vashel. That's the Chayr, what you could say, Chat Mishnah Bura. Mashenke, like the sheet of the Magen Avram, that holds the Issa Chazara is also Shashchitu. Or the Chaznish that goes that way. That the Isser of Chazara is also because of Shashchit. It's partial, there's no mock in the Chalab between Shia and Chazara, and the halacha would be that it would tackle be also. So Bama says the Chaznish Lahedya brings this Mishnah Bura and says that's a pella. It says, Ikediv Yeshuas Yankiv, the Inni Chazara, Sagi, Bekov Tzadechot, Aflam Adam Alishois, Bino Tzosik Cholim, Ain't moving. Ve'er Tachas Yod Lion Boy, he says, I don't have the Sefer to mine. But, he says, but he doesn't understand it. Chazish versteht sich, doesn't understand it because he holds the Isra is Shashchitu. What should be the difference between Chazara and Shir? Hashem was able to bring down Yeshuas Yankiv because Yeshuas Yankiv was going l'chayra that the Isra is because of Mechsi Kimei Vashel, and since the Isra is Mechsi Kimei Vashel, Samelo Taka, there's a chil between Chazara and Shir. And the emes is, it's interesting if you look at the Yeshuas Yankiv inside, it's clear that he Taka went like the Magen Avram. That the Isra is because of Chash Chitur. And Ava Pikin has a cheshbon to be makel. I'm not going to go into what his cheshbon is, but I can put him with the Mishnah Bura was makel in Yeshuas Yankiv Genira that he went with Mechsing and Vashel. And it's clear the Chaznish, he understood the Mishnah Bura that way, and he argues and says it's not the Pshat, but the Pshat is because of Chash Chitur. A lot of Nafkamina is like this. This is a Shaila that happens a lot of times that, let's say for some reason, someone took a pot off the fire and they put it down on a counter, they put it somewhere else where right now there's not going to be any more a heter to make chazor. Because you don't have a tray chazor, which will speak out which cases would be nichel on it. Fine. The question is, but the Maisa, it's something that, let's say it's the cholent, it's the ikasuda, and it's nichel on the halacha that it's mutter shvus to shvus aydeyakum. There's halachas in Shin Chafei, Sefyud, which things are mutter they goy. Mishnah Bura over there brings down 3 madregas. If it's something that's mamish domain suda, something that's the ikasuda, that's 1 madrega that's mutter, then there's something that you can manage at it, but something very important, and then there's something just like a dessert. Upon the first thing is zichah mutter they goy. If it's only a shal rabban, the second thing is a limchos, and if it's just like a dessert, there's no head. Like upon it, but something that's like a chon. Someone's not going to have a chon, especially have guests. There's a mokum to makel to tell a guy to do is a rabban because the shvus the mokum mitzvah v'nik shat. Oh, so now let's say someone took off the gdera by mistake and had asked not to put it back, and they didn't realize that the dayim didn't eat yet. For whatever reason, that was the story. Could you ask a guy to put back the gdera? Talking about, let's say, didn't cool off yet. There's no shaila bishul. I don't get into shaila bishul like a bishul. Could you ask a guy to put it back? So the bialocha at the end of the simon brings a prima godim that says that it's talking about that's even got cooled off. It's a davar yavish. It's only a shaila of chazara. Prima godim says that if someone's makel and goyim, it's a mokin to makel they goy. The Chazanish is matmi on the Mishnah Bura. He says, I don't understand what you're saying. The issa of chazara is a chash chitur. So he says, I don't understand. The goy, all the guy's telling goy is that he put it on. So he says, I don't understand. What happens if a monkey put it on? There's still an issa because of chash chitur. So if the monkey put it on, you have to take it off right away. So all you're helping with the issa of with the heter shus shvus is a heter to make the mice and a scene to put it on. Okay, so now you had a heter, you didn't do it, okay, did it. But what you had to continue leaving it there. There's still a chash chita. Mishnah Berurah l'shita, so that holds the Isser is Mexican vashel. So there the Isser is only the mice and a scene. So if the Isser is the mice and a scene, so if a guy is putting it on, and there's a heter shus to shus, so Rabban is going to be mutter, because you didn't do it. There's a heter to do that mice. The fact that it continues being on there, that's not a problem. That's only a chash chita. There's no chash chita, something that's fully cooked. That holds that the Isser of CHAZARA is also chash chitui, so it's just a mitzvah that it's being on the fire. Meli held there's no mocking to mekel even a day going. Now the emes is it's not mukhrach to say the Mishnah Berurah the shita. So you could say that even if you hold b'shoyish like the Chaznish, Moshe, you hold like the Mogen Avram, that the Isser is al chash chitui, but still you could agree with the Mishnah Berurah's psak. Why? Because we said before, why is CHAZARA more chomer than she? We said over the Rebbeinu Thomas Evi Yosha says that since the person has it in his hand and he's being metapod as a chash, they'll see it's senelis and he's going to come to be mechat. So it could be the Isser is only on the mice and the sina. Once the mice is put back, I did a koif, or in our case, the koif put it back, could be there's no problem anymore. The Chaznish Weister holds that once the main Isser CHAZARA and the Isser CHAZARA is Mexican out trash chito, together was just like the Isser sheep. But you could miyashiv the psak of the Mishnah Berurah, even like the sheet of the Mogen Avram. A third nafkamina you could have is, we spoke about putting on, let's say, a crack pot is the Isser Shia if it only has one setting. One setting, there's no chash chitui. So we spoke about maybe there's loy plug, but shoyet dvarim there shouldn't be any Isser Shia. We spoke about. But if there's a problem medicine and vashel, it's still be a problem. So if you go like the Mishnah Berurah, the versteht sich a crackpot, even if there's someone who want to be makel, if it's a one setting, but that's only gabe Isser Shia. But gabe CHAZARA, there's no more to makel. But if you go with a chash chitui, then it'll be told what we said then. Not a shayla we spoke about then. Well, what about a hot plate? A hot plate that has two settings. So there's a chash chitui, but over here by CHAZARA could be better because now the derech vashel on a hot plate. So maybe there could be no Mexican vashel. Let's say you have a hot plate that only has one setting, so there's no chash chitui, and could be that there's no Mexican vashel either. So that could be l'kuliyam or be mutter. Well, as you say, we spoke about them. Maybe just like plug. That's a separate shot, but one of ikadin come out, there wouldn't be a problem. Another shmuz we spoke about that the emes that there's many svaras that there shouldn't be a chash chitui in our tanura. We spoke about because over there, those days, there was a reason for a person mechata, because the chol could be ayimais, mashengim today, the fire stays by itself. We said the Moshe svara, that's always called you're bringing eitzim. We said other svaras, because the Bialach doesn't stop because man, that there's an eshtir, maybe there's no Isser. Or we said by a tanner, you're really just making it high, you're just making that the thermostat makes the fire stay on longer, but it's not really high. They said all the different svaras weren't making with these svaras, but we said with these svaras enough that you can be saying halacha of Chananya. And these are all, and we said other cases that you can use it for tziruf. These are all svaras if in Shia that the Isser is chitui, then the svaras that today maybe it's not doing it to what the Gzeir of Chazal made, and there's no chash chitui. But when you talk about the Isser CHAZARA, the Mishnah Berurah holds that the Isser is Mexican vashel, about all these svaras don't apply. Vaito Moshe, we spoke about a blech. Do you have to cover the fire, or do you have to cover the knobs? Maybe you have to cover both. The shaila was, do you have to down the mokim of chitui, which is the fire, or you have to down the way you get mechata is with the knob. In those days, the mokim of chitui and the way you mechata is the same place. It's the fire, and it's the fire. But here, the fire is the mokim where the chitui is tungaif, but the ma'aser chitui is with the knob. So we spoke about a shaila, we spoke about the ikaloch is pashas that you have to cover the fire. Zamokin to machma to cover the knobs also. But we said there were some baron, maybe others that held that it has to do with covering the knobs also. Well, that maybe that's the ikr, but that's all gabe shia. But when we talk about gabe CHAZARA, there, if this is like the Mishnah Berurah says, Mexican vashel, these farms don't apply. About is pashit that you have to cover the fire itself. The knob is only in the shaila of a chash chitui. Mashenkein, Lagabe, the fire itself is poshet that has to be covered because you have to make it that Mexican vash. So Lasakim Advorim Bekitzel comes out like this. We have Issa Shia, and that like Chananya, there's no problem once the Kamaychem and Soy, Wale Rabonov, it's a special called Torkoi, and it's Mistamik, the Rally. We have Issa Chazor. Issa Chazor is to Mefurish in the Paiskim that it's also, as a Mefurish in the Mishnah Betzim, it's also like Chananya, even if it's fully cooked. Like Rabonov, it's also even if it's fully cooked, even if it's a Stam Rally, still is also. Why is it Mucham? So they said two Malchim. Either Chazor has a Mohammedik Isser, because a Mexican Vashel, it comes out the Isser of Chazor is a whole new Isser. It's Mexican Vashel, you're putting something on the fire on Shabbos, looks like even Vashel. And the only way to take care of that is by making a Gorfa Kotam. So it comes out the Gorfa Kotam by Chazorah is to Ngoiv that's not Mexican Vashel. The Gorfa Kotam, the Gabi Shia, is to Ngoiv that there's no Chash Chita. That was one way to learn. And we said over Azayz Mavur in the Rashba, the Ritfa, Mida Chisa, we said it's normal to say no. Sai Shia, Sai Chazor is Chash Chita. Now, first, the reason why Chazor is Mochama is because since you have the day in your hand and you're putting it back, it's much more of a Chash. The person will be Mechato because he sees that it's cold. We said the Balamor and Taisus went with this Malach. Ladina, we said the Mogan Avram seems to go with the Chasfara of Shashchita, and Mishabura went back with the Chasfara of Mexican Vashel, and the Chazdush went with the Shashchita like the Shita of Mogan Avram. And we said over many nafkaminas halacha. First of all, even though the Gabi Shia halacha is that if you go to mix the Gecholim, doesn't help, you have to go all the Gecholim out because it's a Shashchita. But we said the Gabi Chazara, it was enough to machat under the Ketera, or you have to take out all the Gecholim, that's totally. If it's a chash chitu like Shia, it'll be the same thing. But if it's Mexican Vashel, maybe it's enough to take it, the cholam out from under the Kedera. We state in Mishabur, B'Shem Yeshua is Yankim. Vaito, we said it could be an Afkamino, the Gabe, if he is king of Goy, to put it on. Mishabur is Mekel. Why? Because the Issa is the Meister Nesino. Okay? So Shvus, Mutter, they Goy. But if the Issa, the Mitzis is being there, and just the Chazor is Mohammed, then Avaradu wouldn't be had to be stated Chazanish. Weiter, you have a crack pot that has one setting, that maybe is noch Chash Chitoi, unless it says like plug, Hashengen Chazor is messing Vashel, it'll still be a problem. You have a hot plate, maybe it's not a Mokum Bishul, but it'll still be a Chash Chitoi. But if it's one setting, then it's not messing Vashel. And it's noch Chash Chitoi, then maybe it could be mutter, unless you say there's like plug, but Mikadin shouldn't be a problem. Same thing, we said all the svaros that we said that maybe there shouldn't be any chash chitui on our ovens, on our stovetops. That's all the gabi chitui. But if we did a new shaila mess and vashel, all those things don't apply. And the last thing we said was this: that we said that there's a question if you have to cover the fire itself or you have to cover the knobs. And we said there's armakilim just for the knobs. We said, we go, you have to cover the fire. You want machmat to cover knobs also. But Gabi Chazorah, since the Mishnah Berurah holds the Iker is out Mechsa Vashel, you have to cover the fire itself. The Emes says there's really not an Afkamina. I don't know if I learned Reish and Dalit. It's a din of Toch Petit. Toch Petit means, the literal explanation of Toch Petit means that the oven was sealed with tit. And Melo, there's no chash that you're going to come to Mechata, because by the time you're going to open up the oven and break the seal, it's going to already, you're going to remind yourself that it's Shabbos. The practical application that the place will speak about, let's say you locked it, speak about you have a thermostat and a mikvah, speak about different echetimtzes. The Chazush says the minnow would have the same Allah as locked. But that's all. It means you're locking the mokim where you be Mechata. But that's all Benegeya if the Isser of Shia is Chitut. So Chazor is Chitut, would be the same thing. And if Chazor is Metzger, Vashel, Mishnah Berurah learned, it doesn't make a difference if you can Mechata or not. This has nothing to do with the Chitut. The Isser is a Metzger Vashel. It's one of various or one Nakuda, would be, I guess, more of a psicha for Mishnah we're going to speak about. It comes out, we have the Isser of Chazara, which is Idas Metzger Vashel or Chash Chitut. Then that's all why you need to have a Gorfakot. Then there's Mavur in the Sugya that you have to have Troy Chazar, which means it has to be Oide Biyodoi, and it has to be Daita Lachsor, maybe it has to be Resachas, which was a shadow which Troim they need. They need all the Troim, some of the Troim. But the Yisrael Dvarim is that in all these cases, that if we don't have the Tanai Chazara, then we don't even see Ma'aseh Chazara. The Tanai Chazara makes it that now we see as a hemshech of the Mishnah of Bishul, and it's called a Ma'aseh Chazara, then a Gorva Katan is going to. But if we can't see the Ma'aseh Chazara, then we see it as a Nesil Lechatchila, then even Gorva Katan is not going to help. We'll speak about that in Mitzvah in a different time. But Mitzvah next week, we'll speak about the Shorish of all the Tanai